I've been making sourdough bread for quite a while now. I love the look of the loaves. They're so rustic, they look so homemade and homely. But most of all, I love the taste of the sourdough bread. However, I do find there's a couple of problems. First of all, the crust tends to be very, very thick and can often be very hard to cut through, even with a sharp knife. And the shapes that you get from a conventional loaf like this are quite difficult to deal with. They're too big to go in the toaster, or you get little end bits that just get wasted. So I have experimented with using loaf tins or Dutch ovens to get more conventional shapes which are easier to slice and easier to toast and generally deal with. The other thing is that you need an awful lot of paraphernalia to make sourdough bread in the normal way. Lots of tips and advice online, of course, and they all seem to suggest that you buy stuff. And it works, but it's quite time consuming and quite labour intensive. So I wondered if, as an engineer, I could adapt the process to use my old faithful Panasonic breadmaker. It's probably about 15-20 years old, but it's been very good, and I thought maybe I could use it to make proper sourdough. This is the model, and it does have a recipe for sourdough. For rustic sourdough, there are two bits. One is to make the dough and the other is to bake it. But in the booklet they recommend using dried yeast, which of course is a no-no if you're a sourdough purist. So I haven't used any dry yeast. I've just adapted my process to see if I can use these two dough making and baking processes to make a decent sourdough loaf. This is what I did. Here's my starter. I keep it in the fridge. It gets fed a couple of times a week. We're now going to make a levain, or just a great big starter basically, in order to get our dough rising well the next day. I'm making this in the evening so that the levain can brew overnight. And I'm going to use, after mixing the starter well, I'm going to use 50 grams of the starter in a clean container, and then I'm adding 100 grams of white flour. It's not any particular special flour. I don't think the flour is all that critical, but you might like to add a bit of wholemeal or a bit of rye. And then I'm adding some warm water, just tested lukewarm with my finger, another 100 mils of water. Give it a good mix. If you like, put a rubber band around it so you can see where the original level is. So just to recap, that's 50 grams starter, 100 grams flour, 100 grams warm water. And then this levain goes into the airing cupboard overnight. This is quite a warm airing cupboard at the moment, so it's got plenty of opportunity to work away. And the next morning we can see it's risen quite nicely. It looks bubbly, and if we look into the top, see lots of activity there, so that's working well. In the morning we're ready to put the materials into the pan of the bread maker. The pan goes on the scales. We add all of the levain that's brewed overnight. That's what it looks like. Best to put that in first so you don't get any dried flour stuck to the bottom. And then we're adding flour, white flour, 400 grams. Then we're adding some more lukewarm water, 280 grams or 280 mils. 1 teaspoon of salt. So just to recap, add the levain, 400 grams flour, 280 grams warm water, 1 teaspoon of salt. And that's what it looks like when it's back in the machine. Now we're going to add a few seeds. This is optional. You don't have to if you don't want to. I like to add a few seeds. It gives a bit of crunch and a bit of texture. So there's some sunflower, some linseed and some millet. Okay, Now we're going to use process 26, which is the sourdough dough making process, and it takes 2.5 hours. There's no options on it, that's just what it's set to. We set it off to go, and this is what it looks like when it's finished. Looks like a reasonable dough. I like to speed the process up by putting this pan out of the bread maker into the airing cupboard again. You've got options here though. If you want to slow the process down, you could leave it at room temperature, or if you want to slow it down further, maybe because you've got to go out, or you don't want to bake it until the evening, you could put it in the fridge or a cooler place. It just depends really how it fits in with your schedule. And here, after a couple of hours, you can see that it's really risen quite nicely, and this is the point at which you use your judgment as to whether it's ready to be baked. Back into the machine, and we're now setting recipe 18. This is the bake recipe, and you can adjust the time here. I've adjusted it to the maximum, which is 1.5 hours bake. It seems quite long, but the bread maker doesn't get as hot as a conventional oven. And ping! Here it is. Here's our finished loaf after 1.5 hours. Take it out, and it looks pretty good. It's a nice golden colour, good shape. It doesn't have that artisan look, of course, that the other round cob loaves have. It doesn't have slashes in the top, but what we're really trying to do is to make good tasting bread easily. So once it's cooled down, we can cut it. It's got a good crust, but it can be cut quite simply with a sharp knife. This is what it looks like inside. It's quite a good texture. It doesn't have huge bubbles in it, but the taste is really the thing we're after. Cut a slice, toast it, and with some butter and marmalade, it's delicious. So if you want a simpler process to make sourdough, you can do it in your bread maker, and you don't need to use dried yeast, and you don't need to pay a fortune for a loaf from the high street artisan bread shop. I don't know what the cost is, but it's less than £1. Happy baking, and thanks for watching.